All right, welcome back everyone to today's Explainer. Go ahead and grab a seat, get comfortable, because today we are taking a deep dive into the profound, honestly kind of mind-bending existential philosophy hidden within one of the most fascinating literary figures of the 20th century. We're talking about the Portuguese writer Fernando Pessoa. If you've ever, questioned the actual nature of your own identity, well, you're definitely in the right classroom today. So let's jump right in.
To hook you right from the start, I want you to literally take a second and just look around the room. I mean, I obviously can't see you from here, but you are definitely somewhere right now. And as you're sitting there, I really want you to question the absolute solidity of your own personal narrative. Think about it. You've got a name, a major, a job, this whole story you constantly tell yourself about who you actually are. But have you ever felt like that story is just a little bit thin? Is the you currently sitting in the driver's seat of your consciousness actually just one of a dozen different characters hovering in the air, simply waiting for their turn to be written?
So, here is our syllabus for today's Explainer. First, the absurdity of being. Second, the Factless Autobiography. Third, heteronyms and infinite selves. Fourth, the trapdoor of self-awareness. Fifth, art as existential vaccine. And finally, number 6, embracing the disquiet.
Starting us off with Section 1, the absurdity of being.
Really think about your current physical state for a moment. You are quite literally magnetized to a strange, lushly coated wet rock floating in a designated position of absolute, endless nothing. I mean, it's an absolutely enthralling absurdity, isn't it? We spend so much of our daily energy clinging to our names, our titles, stressing about deadlines, all while literally floating in an infinite void. Recognizing this absolute baseline strangeness of existing, that's the necessary first step into Pessoa's philosophy.
Which brings us to Section 2, the Factless Autobiography.
Let's quickly trace the timeline of Pessoa's actual life. He was born in Lisbon back in 1888, and his childhood was pretty heavily marked by tragic loss. He actually lost both his father and his brother to illness at a really young age. Moving into adulthood, he spent the vast majority of his life working in complete, total obscurity as an assistant bookkeeper. And when he passed away at age 47, he was essentially completely unknown to the wider world. So, on paper, his external life was tragically mundane. But as students of philosophy, we know that external events rarely tell the whole story, right?
Because the crucial point here is this stark academic juxtaposition. You look at his external reality, entirely mundane, a quiet, completely predictable assistant bookkeeper. Yet internally, the guy possessed a completely chaotic, vibrant universe. After he died, Pessoa left behind this wooden trunk in Lisbon, and it was just stuffed with tens of thousands of manuscript pages, just these fragmented vignettes of a man who claimed he didn't even exist. That trunk contained what we now know as the Book of Disquiet. It is just a stunning contrast between a completely quiet external life and a literally infinite internal universe.
All right, moving on to Section 3, heteronyms and infinite selves.
Now we've got to start this part with a rigorous academic definition of the concept at the very center of his work, because a heteronym is absolutely not the same thing as a pseudonym. A pseudonym is just a fake name you slap on your own work, like a pen name. A heteronym, though, that consists of entirely fictitious authors created by a writer, but they possess their own distinct writing styles, their own complex backstories, and completely independent philosophical views. Pessoa didn't just write the Book of Disquiet. He actually claimed he wasn't even the author of it. Instead, the work is attributed to these heteronyms, figures with names like Bernardo Suarez and Vicente Guedes. And these weren't just characters in a story. These were entirely realized entities living inside a single human mind. They would sometimes actually disagree with each other. They'd critique each other's work, and they held completely opposing worldviews. Pessoa was essentially hosting this massive, continuous philosophical salon entirely inside his own head. And just to really emphasize the sheer volume of this undertaking, 80. Pessoa created around 80 different fictitious authors in his lifetime. By splitting himself into 80 separate pieces like that, he wasn't just doing some quirky creative writing exercise. He was illustrating a really profound existential truth, that the self is not a solid, singular thing. Our nature is actually deeply fragmented, and ultimately, an illusion.
Let's dive into Section 4, the trapdoor of self-awareness.
Pessoa described the experience of truly being a person as falling through a trapdoor through infinite space in a directionless empty fall. Just sit with that for a second. Think about the visceral disorientation and the intense loneliness of that imagery. Because when you strip away the comforting illusion of a solid self, when you finally realize you are just a multitude of fragmented voices, it literally feels like a free fall down a rabbit hole of alienation.
and he took this realization to its ultimate, terrifying extreme. He wrote, "I am the nothing around which all this spins. I am the center that exists only because every circle has one." He felt like an absolute vacuum, like a black maelstrom at the very center of a swirling ocean of images and voices. The self, to Pessoa, was basically just a mathematical necessity. It was just a center point required for the circle to exist. But inside, it contained absolute nothingness.
Moving to Section 5. Art as Existential Vaccine. Now, Pessoa didn't just wallow in this void. He actually developed a really fascinating coping mechanism. Step 1, confront the absurdity and futility of life through art. Step 2, use this confrontation to build immunity to what he called the fever of existing. And Step 3, survive the disquiet. He basically viewed his writing as a preventative biological treatment. You know how a physical vaccine uses a tiny amount of a virus to help your body build immunity? Well, Pessoa believed that by dosing himself with the absurdity of life through his art, he could develop the philosophical immunity required to actually endure it.
He operated under absolutely zero delusions of grandeur. He recognized a really harsh truth. In the grand movie of the universe, our lives are just a single frame that could be removed without the story changing at all. He knew his deeds would eventually lose their name tags and just fade into the void. Yet he found this beautiful, sad delight in writing anyway. The very act of creating, even in the absolute face of total futility, was his defiance. It was his medicine.
Finally, Section 6. Embracing the disquiet. The number 47. That is how many years his wooden trunk sat completely undisturbed in Lisbon. He wrote with this sad delight, trusting that one day, long after his death, people would finally read his sentences and understand him. He believed that those future readers would become his true family in a future he wouldn't even be part of. And students, that future is literally happening right now through this very explainer. By opening his trunk today and studying these concepts, we become that family. And so, what is his ultimate gift to us? It's this profound realization. You are a you on a rock, part of an enthralling absurdity, and you have the absolute freedom to simply be. By understanding his infinite, fragmented self, you are empowered to stop taking your own personas so incredibly seriously. It is perfectly fine to be inconsistent. It is totally fine to be muddled. You do not have to be just one solid, unwavering thing. The pressure we feel to maintain a singular, perfect narrative is a total illusion, so just let it go.
So I'm going to leave you with this lingering Socratic prompt as your take-home assignment for the week. Do you ever feel like a character in a novel as yet unwritten? I want you to really ponder that as you walk to your next class. Remember, you're just on a beautiful, weird rock floating in endless nothing. Don't be afraid to get a little lost in the disquiet. Thanks for joining me for today's lecture, and I'll catch you next time.